cheating on you?
My mom's words stopped time. It was supposed to be a casual chat at Mom's house. But her serious expression sent chills down my spine. "Just investigate," she said firmly to me. Pushed by her strong tone, I went home and found an unwelcome truth. There were unfamiliar clothes in the trunk of the car, showing me a side of my husband William that I had never seen before. Once I started suspecting, everything William did seemed suspicious. William quickly checked his phone and left the room, had frequent business trips and overtime, and came home late at night, but this had been happening since we got married. When did he start deceiving me? Who is the other person? What kind of face does he make when he smiles at her? What sweet words does he say to her? Was his kindness to me just to hide his affair? I recalled all of William's actions. He always spoke to me with a smile. He was supposed to be my proud, serious, and kind husband who cared deeply about family.
If you're tired, why don't you take some time for yourself? Let's celebrate our 20th wedding anniversary with the family.
Looking at me happily listening to William's talk, what was he thinking? In the photos in the living room, we look so happy. Were all those smiles fake? I believed in him all this time. For 20 years, we lived in the same house and shared the same time. My limbs felt weak, and I was overwhelmed by a sense of the world turning white. The feelings of 20 years shattered in an instant. I used to look forward to William coming home every day, checking the clock multiple times. But now, I didn't even want him to come home. This was the first time I felt this way in our 20 years of marriage. I felt uncomfortable in my own home. Then the phone rang. Mom, on the other end, spoke slowly.
Make sure he deeply regrets what he's done.
I am Mary, a 45-year-old housewife. My daughter, Jennifer, is a 13-year-old girl who resembles me and is very responsible. She's a bright, kind, and thoughtful girl, and I'm proud of her. She excels in sports and has the skill to compete in state tournaments for her tennis club. I am not very good at sports, so Jennifer must have inherited her athleticism from William. My husband William is a 45-year-old company employee who commutes an hour each day for the sake of our family. He bought a house near Mom's place just for me. And I am grateful for his thoughtfulness. We originally joined the company at the same time, and during the training period, we became friends, meeting for dinner once a month. Normally, William, who had a serious and cool image, would become talkative when he drank, and I found that endearing. In fact, I could hold my liquor better than he could, and William would always sit next to me, leaning slightly on my shoulder as he started to get tipsy. The weight and warmth of his shoulder felt lovely and comforting. 3 years into our employment, many colleagues transferred to other departments, and our dinner gatherings became less frequent. Despite this, our group was known for being particularly close, often coming together for weddings and farewell parties. After the wedding of a colleague I was closest to, I was walking while gazing at the bouquet I received. "Mary, do you want to get married?" And William asked me.
Huh? Do I look like I do? Yeah, you look really happy.
I'm embarrassed, but seeing how happy they looked made me think it would be nice. I want to wear a wedding dress, too. I should find someone soon. William, looking flustered, responded.
Stop looking.
Seeing my stunned expression, William scratched his head, looking down shyly, and began to speak.
I didn't plan to say this today, but I blurted it out.
I thought William looked somewhat like a boy for the first time, in his hurried state. After taking a deep breath, he looked straight at me and continued with a serious expression.
I want to be with you, Mary. If I said this after the wedding, it might seem like I was caught up in the moment, so I wanted to tell you at a different time. I'm sorry. I like you, Mary. Please go out with me.
I was speechless, and seeing this, William continued, looking a bit lost.
You don't have to answer now. Let's go home. Or should we go for a drink? No, let's go home.
Watching him fluster, I found him cute. I felt a sense of fate when he confessed to me on the day I received the bouquet.
Let's go home today, but since it's a special day, let's take a picture first.
I said. Today?
Yeah, today.
We both smiled shyly at each other. We went to the observation floor of a nearby skyscraper and took a photo together before heading home. Starting from the photo we took that day, we have always taken a picture together on our anniversaries. I promised myself to never forget how I felt on that day, so I placed the photo in the most noticeable spot in our living room. Over the course of our 20-year marriage, we accumulated more photos than we could display, but I never put away that particular one from that day. This year is our 20th wedding anniversary. Shall we go on a trip? Maybe buy something matching as a keepsake? Mary, is there anything you want? Let's look into it, William suggested. We have held on to the same feelings from that day, never forgetting them. After we got married, William told me,
My ideal is to come home and have you welcome me.
He encouraged me to become a housewife. When Jennifer was born and we started needing more money, I considered working again and discussed it with him. I'll work harder, so please stay at home to keep Jennifer from feeling lonely. He responded. True to his word, William's business trips and overtime increased after our marriage. William was always known for his dedication to work and had a reputation for being earnest within the company. Consequently, he often attended business dinners. Despite his busy schedule, he would take us to places Jennifer and I would enjoy on weekends. Sometimes, he'd say,
I'll take care of Jennifer today, so you can go out and enjoy yourself for a change, Mary.
He even made sure I had free time. I trust William completely and am grateful to him. Friends often express envy over my wonderful husband. I have no complaints. Sorry, I have to work late again today, he texted. What time do you think you'll be home? I asked. I'm not sure yet. I'll let you know when I'm on my way back.
Thank you for your hard work. Take care, I replied.
This was our usual text exchange. William, despite wanting to come home early, was working overtime for the sake of our family. As I covered his meal on the dining table with plastic wrap, Jennifer, fresh out of the shower, started talking to me. Is Dad working late again?
Yes. It's tough for him, isn't it? With all these late nights and dinner meetings, I worry about his health. Today's meal is designed to help him recover from fatigue, so I hope he gets to eat it when he comes home.
This week, he had 3 dinner meetings and 2 late nights. He also had a business trip scheduled for next week. I recently saw on TV that people in their 40s are more prone to health issues. To help him recover from fatigue, I prepared a meal to warm his body. As I started ironing William's suit and shirt for the next day, Mom, can I talk to you? Jennifer spoke up. Next week, is Dad going on a business trip?
Yes, he mentioned going out of town. If you want any souvenirs, just ask him. Okay.
Jennifer's voice sounded unusually subdued. I wondered if something happened at school or if she needed more allowance. When I looked at her, her expression was serious.
Do you think it's really a business trip?
What was she talking about? Had she been watching too many dramas about infidelity? William and I never fought, so what could have prompted Jennifer to imagine such things? It was amusing to see her seriously entertain such thoughts. She's really growing up, I thought. I couldn't help but laugh.
What kind of imagination do you have? Dad works so hard for our family. It's definitely just a business trip.
Unlike me, Jennifer kept a straight face. It's not my imagination. The other day, I overheard Dad on the phone talking about which hotel he'd stay at, and he mentioned a woman named Linda. It sounded plausible, but lacked conviction. Was she trying to shock me?
What are you talking about? Dad is hardly ever alone in this house. I'm always here. That was the day Dad suggested you go out. Remember? You went to the movies, and I went to a friend's game, but it ended early, so I came home and overheard him.
I did go to the movies that day. And I had told William the showtimes, so it was possible. But William, my serious William. Him having an affair? Impossible.
Jennifer, you're going to make Dad sad if you say things like that. He's doing his best for the family. He's going on the trip with James from work. You probably misheard the name.
Jennifer looked dissatisfied with my dismissal and retreated to her room. This weekend, William and I were going to watch Jennifer's tennis match together. Seeing us getting along should clear up her suspicions. I decided not to tell William about Jennifer's doubts to avoid hurting his feelings. That night, William came home late. He had texted, "Don't wait up for me, you'll get sick." But I stayed up, worried.
You're still up. I told you to sleep. But thank you for waiting,
William said when he arrived. His gratitude reassured me that there was no affair. The next day, I went to visit Mom. Since getting married, I've made it a point to see her every Thursday. The main reason is to ensure Mom doesn't feel lonely living by herself, but in truth, as a housewife, spending time with Mom is my best form of relaxation. We usually chat about trivial things, and before I know it, it's time to go home and prepare dinner.
Mom, guess what? Jennifer said she thinks Dad might be having an affair.
I laughed as I brought up the topic. Mom is usually so calm and collected, so I expected her to laugh it off, saying, "William? No way." But to my surprise, she turned serious.
What do you mean? Tell me everything.
Seeing Mom's serious expression, I explained the details. I felt a pang of guilt because the reason Mom lives alone in our family home is due to my dad's affair and their subsequent divorce 20 years ago. Maybe I had brought up some painful memories for her. Even after 2 decades, it's still something that can stir her deeply. I remember how her heart seemed to shatter back then. She lost her appetite and kept losing weight. I worried she might be ill.
I'm not sick, don't worry. I just want to lose some weight before your wedding,
she'd say, always putting on a brave face, never crying or showing her sadness in front of me. My mom was strong. One day, with a look in her eyes I had never seen before, she said to me,
I'm sorry, Mary. I can't stay with your dad any longer.
She looked so resolute, like she had made up her mind to live on her own.
I thought I could hold on until your wedding, but I just can't forgive your dad for his affair. I'm sorry.
She must have struggled with the decision, not wanting to disrupt my wedding plans. The thought of her battling between the pain of staying with Dad and her desire to see me off without sadness breaks my heart.
Don't worry about me,
I managed to say, though I had so much more I wanted to express. I just couldn't find the right words. Mom only told me that Dad had an affair. She never went into details. After he left the house and the divorce was finalized, she cleared out the house, erasing any trace of him. Strangely, I felt more comfortable in the house without Dad around. Then Mom said something unexpected.
Mary, I didn't want to tell you, but I've been suspecting William of having an affair for a while. His behavior reminds me of your father's.
Her words left me speechless.
When I visited your home, I saw William go back to get his wallet, saying he had brought the wrong one. Your father did the same thing, keeping a separate wallet for his meetings with the other woman. I couldn't help but worry.
I knew William had 2 wallets. He said it was to keep his personal and business expenses separate. He used the one I gave him for personal use, so I was sure he couldn't be cheating on me.
When I mentioned to William how tough it must be to go on long business trips, he said, "Next time, I'd like to take the family with me." If it were for work, sightseeing wouldn't be possible, so saying he wants to go privately next time would make sense. But Mary, your dad used to take us to the same places he went with his lover to make his stories align.
I was supposed to laugh it off, but seeing the serious look on Mom's face made me suddenly anxious. But he is such a serious person. It felt like I was making excuses for myself. Does he leave his mobile phone lying around? Is it ever left in a place where you can see it without any care? Now that she mentioned it, I usually leave mine anywhere, but William always has his with him.
But that's because William is meticulous, and he needs to be reachable for work at all times. There are no telltale signs like the smell of perfume or lipstick on his shirts, and no matter how late it gets, he always comes home by morning.
He couldn't be having an affair. William is a serious and dedicated worker. He always puts the family first and does things to make Jennifer and me happy.
Mary, if it's a mistake, we can laugh about it later. But just this once, check properly. Check his car. Your dad was the same. Careful men don't leave traces in the house. They can hide things in the car and don't need to bring them into the house.
Mom's serious expression made me only able to respond with a hesitant,
"Okay."
I offered to drive William to do some shopping for his business trip and said I would fill up the car with gas while he was shopping. I headed to the gas station, pretending to clean the car, and started searching it. I couldn't do this at home because the neighbors might see. Dashboard, nothing. Under the seats, nothing. Trunk, nothing. I lifted the trunk mat just in case and found a black bag behind the spare tire. Inside, there were clothes. Men's clothes in William's size. They were definitely his. But I had never seen these clothes before. They seemed to have been used, but they were not new. They smelled of fabric softener. But not the one we use at home. Everything started to seem suspicious, just as Mom had said. I began to panic, my thoughts swirling around in my head. As I started to think, all of William's actions began to connect to the idea of an affair. His business trips increased right after we got married. Were those trips meant to spend time with his lover? Could he have been cheating on me even before we got married? Did he encourage me to become a housewife so that his affairs at work wouldn't be noticed? Was the time he gave me for myself, as Jennifer mentioned, actually for spending time with his lover? Were the various places he took us to, as Mom said, the same places he took his lover? The actions I had considered William's kindness now seemed to take on a more sinister meaning. We talked about celebrating our 20th anniversary. The thought that his heart was not in it made me feel as if a hole had been drilled in the middle of my chest, filling me with emptiness. I treasured the photos from the day he proposed to me, but now even those moments felt tainted. It was almost time to return to William, but I couldn't muster the strength to move. Just then, my phone rang. With trembling hands, I looked at the screen and saw that it was Mom calling. I answered with a shaking voice.
"How did it go?"
She asked.
"I think he's having an affair, but why?"
Why? Mom, sensing my turmoil, spoke firmly.
"Listen, take a deep breath."
I took a deep breath, feeling the tightness in my chest ease a bit. Mom continued after hearing me exhale.
"Now, you're going to go back to William. but don't show anything on your face. Keep your posture straight and act normal. When you get home, come to my place. Understand?
The authority in Mom's voice made me automatically respond. Yes. Strength returned to my previously trembling limbs. I would do as Mom instructed. I returned to William.
Thanks for getting the gas,
William said with his usual smile, but it was painful to look at him now.
You're welcome. Did you get everything you needed for your trip? Yes, I got some good things.
Those things were probably for his lover. That's how he's been deceiving me all this time.
I'm sorry, but I need to go to Mom's house. I found a coffee she might like and I want to bring it to her right away. Sure, that's fine. I have to prepare for my trip anyway, so I'll be at home waiting. I'll pick up something for dinner on my way back.
Right now, I didn't feel like cooking for William. When I arrived at Mom's house, she was waiting anxiously. The moment I saw her, tears started streaming down my face. Mom hugged me as I cried.
Are you calm now?
She asked gently. When I answered, yes.
Then look at me,
she said. When I looked at Mom, she had the same determined look in her eyes as she did back then.
No more crying. We're going to make him regret his mistakes.
She placed something in my hand as she spoke. The next day, William left for his business trip with his usual smile.
I'll do my best.
And he said. I replied with my usual.
Do your best.
As I saw him off. I felt anger rising within me, but I kept my expression neutral until the right moment. I had been deceived for 20 years. It wouldn't be wrong for me to deceive him this one last time. A few days later, William returned from his trip in a cheerful mood, humming a tune.
I'm so tired.
He wanted words of sympathy.
You must be exhausted. Was it tough?
I decided to keep talking as usual. William said.
It was really tough. James got drunk and I had to take care of him all night, so I couldn't contact you. Sorry about that. I still have the smell of James' alcohol on me, so I'm going to take a shower.
With that, he disappeared into the bathroom. While William was in the shower, I made the final preparations. I placed the evidence photos of William's affair one by one in the hallway leading from the bathroom to the living room. On the living room table, I spread out dozens of photos. I heard the sound of William coming out of the bathroom. I sat in the living room, waiting for him. I could hear the sound of him picking up the photos as he approached. When William finally entered the living room, I spoke the words I had prepared.
William, you're having an affair, aren't you?
His face turned pale, and he was speechless.
Didn't you hear me? You're having an affair, right?
I spoke a little louder and slower. William took a deep breath, regained his smile, and calmly replied.
No, I'm not having an affair. There's no way I would do that.
Even in this situation, he tried to laugh it off.
My mom introduced me to the detective who helped her during Dad's affair. And guess what? They managed to get so many clear photos so easily.
I said this with a smile. I had decided that I would say it with a smile no matter what. The contact information Mom had given me the day before William's trip was for this detective. Mom had maintained a long relationship with the detective after the incident with Dad, so they conducted the investigation at a very reasonable price.
Your affair partner is someone from the company, right?
I know.
How did you find out so much? She's our subordinate. We used to be on good terms, didn't we? But not as good as you two,
I said mockingly, watching William freeze. The affair partner was a subordinate at the company, Linda, whose name Jennifer had heard before. I was acquainted with Linda as well. According to the detective's report, during their trip, they talked about
It's almost our 20th anniversary.
suggesting that their relationship indeed started before our marriage. Once I realized the affair had been going on since before our marriage, my feelings for William began to cool. Thanks to that, I could speak calmly. I've prepared the divorce papers, so please sign them.
Jennifer and I will be staying at Mom's house.
During William's trip, I had moved out our belongings, and I had instructed Jennifer to go straight to Mom's house today. Finally noticing that even Jennifer's belongings were gone, William began to panic visibly.
Jennifer's home is here. Mary, you're a housewife. You can't raise a child on your own. So, I won't divorce you. Absolutely not.
Don't you know?
Jennifer told me. It's obvious she'd notice if you were making calls at home.
You're the one who hurt Jennifer.
I won't forgive anyone who hurts Jennifer, not even you. Jennifer packed her things and left on her own.
So, we're not coming back here.
Goodbye. This is a lie. I won't divorce you. Jennifer is my daughter. I will get her back.
William, refusing to accept the divorce, raised his voice for the first time.
Wait! Give Jennifer back. I won't divorce you.
But I left the house without looking back. William kept calling me after I left, but I wasn't in the mood to talk, so I didn't answer. The next night, William suddenly showed up at Mom's house. Mom agreed to let him in on the condition that she would be present. William apologized to me. I'm sorry. I truly regret not considering your feelings, Mary. Please, give me another chance. I couldn't believe the words of someone who had lied to me just yesterday, returning from an affair trip while humming a tune.
But it's been 20 years with Linda, right? That means it started before we got married. You've been betraying me all this time, and Linda is also married. With Linda, it was just a fling.
Wow.
A pretty long fling.
It was surprising that no one at the company had noticed until now. This was the first time I saw William looking so weak. However, my heart, which had trusted and been betrayed for 20 years, no longer felt any sympathy for him. Even now, William still seemed to think I would forgive him.
I realize now that I've taken advantage of you for a long time, Mary. But I regret it.
I need you. William, uncharacteristically, continued to plead earnestly.
Today at work, rumors about the affair were already spreading. It's awkward with Linda, and if things continue like this, both of us might have to resign. Everything I've worked for could disappear.
So that's what it was about. He didn't want to reconcile with me out of love. He was afraid of losing his job and status. And he was worried about Linda too. The rumors likely started because I had consulted with a former colleague to gather evidence of William's trip. I was even more annoyed by William, who was more concerned about his own protection and Linda than about sincerely apologizing to me. As I tried to calm my emotions, Mom, who had been listening quietly until now, spoke up.
You need to atone for your actions. When you hurt someone, you get the same pain in return. You betrayed my precious daughter. I will never forgive you.
Mom was strong in times like these. And I am her daughter. Thinking of my strong mom, I said firmly,
I am getting a divorce.
If you don't agree, I will take it to court. Even after that, William kept coming to Mom's house and calling repeatedly, but neither Mom nor I responded. One day, William came to Mom's house and ran into Jennifer by chance. Seeing Jennifer's face, he said,
I'm relieved to see you. Come home with Dad?
But Jennifer shook her head firmly and said,
I'm living with Mom. I'm not going to Dad's house. I'll be here to support Mom so I can forget about you. So, don't come to see us anymore.
Not long after, William, wanting to avoid a divorce trial, agreed to the divorce. Since the cause of the divorce lay with William, I got custody of Jennifer. I demanded a settlement and child support from both Linda and William. Apparently, Linda's husband was unaware of the affair. My demand for a settlement revealed the affair, causing a huge dispute. Linda's husband's family were the owners of a company that did business with William's company, leading to a significant scandal. Like William, Linda pleaded not to be divorced, but her husband was horrified by the 20-year affair and divorced her. Linda's husband, like me, demanded a settlement from both Linda and William. The scandal affected the company's operations, making it difficult for both of them to stay, and they resigned voluntarily. After that, William and Linda, having no income and facing large financial demands, began to argue about money. Both ended up taking part-time jobs to repay their debts, leading to a difficult life. As their situation worsened, they fought more, ultimately blaming each other and eventually breaking up. As for me, being a housewife, I worried about finding a job, but thanks to an introduction from a supportive colleague, I secured a stable job. Now, I live with Mom and Jennifer at Mom's house. Jennifer, perhaps taking after my mom, has become dependable.
Mom, let me help you,
she says, doing housework or checking on me with.
Mom, are you okay?
From the moment she suspected William's affair, she had decided to stay with me if we divorced. When I told her about the divorce and when we started living with Mom, she showed no signs of shock. Instead, she looked relieved. Sometimes, she would say,
I'm going out with Grandma,
and come back with a cake they had picked out together. For Mother's Day, she prepared gifts for both me and Mom, showing what a kind daughter she is. Our life together, the three of us, passes by calmly and peacefully, and I am very happy. I can't take it anymore. Please, just let me quit, I confessed, feeling utterly cornered and desperate to express my emotions. The humiliating words that had been hurled at me kept echoing in my mind.
Losers should just cry in the corner.
A loser. Maybe that's exactly what I am. I'm completely useless. Even if I tried to raise my voice in protest, I knew that neither Luke nor Carrie would change their minds.
Well then, I suppose I can allow you to stay at the company. It is a favor for Luke, after all, Carrie said condescendingly.
Sorry, that's about all I can do for you. It doesn't seem like you and I can climb the corporate ladder together, Emma, Luke added, his words crushing me. Realizing that I had unknowingly relied too much on Luke, their joint declaration left me stunned and speechless. However, even in my current state, there were still people who saw my worth and appreciated me for who I am.
Why don't you try applying to another company?
What? I responded, taken aback by the idea. But they were right. I couldn't afford to wallow in self-pity forever. Carrie, who had always looked down on me as inferior. Luke, who believed that I couldn't succeed alongside him. I had to prove them both wrong. I refused to let things end this way. My name is Emma Brown, a 28-year-old ordinary company employee. When I first joined the company, I had originally hoped for a desk job. However, due to the company's needs, I was hired into the sales department instead. As someone who had always struggled with interpersonal interactions, working in sales was a constant challenge for me. Even now, just thinking about it makes me want to cry.
You're so slow. Could you please stop dragging us down?
Carrie Smith, my colleague who had joined the company at the same time, would often complain about me. Being the daughter of the executive director, her words carried a lot of weight in various ways. As a result, there were times when I found myself pushed to my limits, both mentally and physically. Nevertheless, I desperately tried my best to avoid getting fired. In the current economic downturn, I knew that once I lost my job, there was no guarantee of finding another one. Perhaps it was because I was always so occupied and had no room to breathe, but to be honest, I had no luck with romance until a few years ago. However, a change was about to come into my life.
Emma, would you please go out with me?
The man who confessed to me was named Luke Williams, a college at the company where I worked. After joining the company, I often found myself watching over his work as his senior. To be honest, he seemed quite reckless at first. Unlike me, who was inexperienced and afraid of sales, he boldly tried to deepen relationships with clients. Sometimes his approach would succeed, while other times it would only serve to make the other party uncomfortable. Together, we accumulated experience working on various cases, leading us to where we are today. Initially, we had a senior-junior dynamic, but before we knew it, we had become colleagues who supported each other at work. By the time I realized it, he had become one of the top performers in our department, and we had developed a relationship where we could complement each other's weaknesses. I suppose he must have strongly felt the same way, which is why he decided to confess to me.
I thought that if it's with you, Emma, we could continue to help each other and climb the corporate ladder together,
he said, echoing my own feelings. Hearing those words that perfectly captured what I had been sensing, I accepted his confession. And so, our relationship began and progressed smoothly. Although we had some minor differences in values, we never had any major fights, and I believe we were able to nurture feelings of mutual affection. For someone like me who tends to be a bit hesitant, having Luke by my side to guide me was reassuring. Luke is a person with strong ambitions and no intention of staying in his current position. That's why the marriage proposal also came from Luke.
Emma, I want you to spend the rest of your life with me,
he declared firmly and powerfully, which made me incredibly happy. Of course, I gladly accepted, but all I could do was nod with tears in my eyes. Even now, remembering that moment makes me embarrassed. And so, we decided to get married and started making preparations, taking our time. I believed that we would get married without any issues and live happily ever after. However, things didn't turn out that way. It happened one day, about a month before our wedding.
Wow, we finished early today,
I mused as the day's sales ended much earlier than scheduled. The biggest reason was that one of our clients had postponed their appointment, but everything else had also gone smoothly without any particular problems. When I checked with my boss about what I should do, "You can go straight home, it's fine. You've been busy lately, haven't you?" he replied. Our manager, Jimmy Johnson, is an amazing person. Not only is he great at his job, but he also takes the time to look out for each and every one of us individually. If I remember correctly, he's only about 3 years older than me. Yet, his abilities as a working professional are so far beyond mine that I have always looked up to him. It's just like you, Emma, to try and get as much work done as possible before your wedding. Once I get married and my life changes, I might not be able to work the same way I have been. That's why I wanted to finish up any work that I could while I still had the chance. And Jimmy, being the understanding partner he is, fully grasped how I felt about our relationship.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate your kindness.
Take this time to relax and rest up, he advised before I ended the call. I expressed my heartfelt gratitude to Jimmy. I've been in Jimmy's care ever since I joined the company. He has been to me what I am to Luke. I even secretly admired him at one point. However, the position of a manager seemed incredibly distant and out of reach for me. As I kept thinking that he was too good for me, my feelings naturally settled down over time. It's funny how I ended up getting engaged to Luke, who is in a sense the opposite position of where I am. Life works in mysterious ways. Thinking about that, I suddenly remembered something. If I recall correctly, Luke had taken a paid vacation day today. Apparently, he had accumulated quite a few and needed to use them up. I had planned to go see him in the evening, but moving up the time might not be a bad idea. Lately, I had been feeling like Luke was a bit down. It might be what they call pre-wedding jitters. Even men can experience it due to financial anxieties about life after marriage or fatigue from all the wedding preparations. If that's the case, I wanted to cheer him up and help him feel a little better. If he wanted to enjoy some alone time, I could always head back home right away. With that in mind, I decided to give Luke a call. However, there was no response. It seemed like his phone was turned off. I wonder if he's okay, I thought to myself, feeling a hint of concern. Growing increasingly anxious, I made my way to Luke's apartment building. I'll just check on him briefly and figure out what to do next, I thought to myself as my pace quickened without me realizing it. Perhaps that's why I arrived at Luke's apartment and his door much sooner than I had anticipated. "Luke, are you there?" I called out while unlocking the door with the spare key he had given me.
"Emma? Just wait a minute."
It seemed like Luke was indeed at home. While feeling a sense of relief, I also noticed something odd. It wasn't just that Luke's voice sounded flustered upon realizing I had come over. There was something else that bothered me even more: the shoes placed at the entrance. In addition to Luke's familiar shoes, there was a pair of women's shoes. I had a feeling I recognized those shoes from somewhere. As that sense of déjà vu turned into a growing unease, I couldn't control my emotions. Ignoring Luke's attempts to stop me, I made my way inside his apartment.
"Why?"
The scene that unfolded before me was beyond belief. He was standing up from the couch, perhaps trying to stop me from entering. And there was Carrie Smith, clinging onto him as if to hold him back. Both of them were halfway undressed. In that situation, rather than sensing any rejection from Luke towards Carrie's embrace, I strongly felt his urgency to do something about me first. Seeing Luke's expression, I instinctively knew that what was happening here wasn't just two coworkers from the same company meeting up. It was a secret rendezvous between Luke and Carrie as a couple.
"Why? Why is this happening?"
I stammered in disbelief. "Well, it's..." Luke mumbled, looking somewhat guilty.
"It's not his fault at all. It's yours,"
she declared without a shred of remorse. Stunned by her audacity, I stood there in shock as she continued boldly.
"You're getting married next month, and yet you can't even keep one man to yourself. How undesirable can you be?"
She smirked at me condescendingly. What was so funny about this situation? Wasn't it far more absurd for someone to try and steal another person's fiancé right before their wedding? Losing all reason, I took a step towards her without thinking deeply about my actions. Did I want to grab her by the collar? Or did I want to do something else entirely? I wasn't sure myself. However, I was stopped from doing anything by none other than Luke himself. Instead of siding with me, his fiancée, Luke chose to protect her. At that moment, I fully understood that his heart was no longer with me, but with Carrie.
"This is awful, just awful,"
I cried out. Confronted with the undeniable proof of their relationship, all I could do was turn my back and run away. I heard someone's voice calling out from behind me, but I was in no state of mind to listen to it till the end. I let my emotions guide my feet, and before I knew it, I had returned to my own home. I was so distraught that I couldn't even remember how I got back. At some point, my surroundings had turned pitch black. The screen of my discarded smartphone lit up every time a call or message came in. But I couldn't bring myself to respond. I spent the entire night like that. What should I do about work? I wondered as I realized it was early morning. I knew I wasn't in any mental state to go to the office. Even if I did go, I would only cause worry and inconvenience for those around me. The right thing to do would be to confront Luke and Carrie and uncover the whole truth. But I was too scared to do even that. I feared that everything I had built up until now would crumble apart. And so, I contacted my manager and informed him that I would be taking the day off. The rest of the day passed by with me doing almost nothing at all. The following morning, I had somehow managed to regain enough composure to face the day. However, I still couldn't bring myself to check the messages that were undoubtedly from Luke on my smartphone. I honestly had no idea what would happen when I saw him at the office. But I couldn't cause any more trouble for the company. With that thought in mind, I dragged myself to work. However, what awaited me there was a situation I could never have anticipated. Good morning, everyone. I apologize for my absence yesterday. I greeted my colleagues as I entered my workspace. But instead of returning my greeting, they all gave me indescribable looks and whispered among themselves.
Well,
I trailed off awkwardly.
no one here wants to talk to you. Can't you read the room?
The only person who spoke to me was Carrie, the last person I wanted to exchange words with right now. I turned to face her, desperately trying to control my trembling body. What do you mean? I asked, my voice unsteady.
You've been acting all high and mighty as a senior for so long, restraining a capable employee like Luke. You're just a piece of trash, aren't you? Carrie accused me harshly. I'm trash? And Luke?
From her perspective, it probably wasn't strange to call Luke by his first name so casually. However, everyone here knew about our engagement. In fact, they were even invited to our wedding. Naturally, her words shouldn't have been accepted so easily. That's what I thought, but no one around us objected to her statement. Luke, why aren't you saying anything? I called out to Luke, who had already arrived at work and was sitting in front of his desk. It was probably true that he had cheated on me with Carrie. Even so, I wanted him to at least not deny everything we had been through together. But Luke remained seated, looking distressed and unwilling to speak up. As if to add insult to injury, Carrie continued her verbal assault.
You've always been forcing him to do all sorts of things, haven't you? You're truly the worst.
She laughed gleefully, taking obvious pleasure in my misery. Even if I were the trash she claimed me to be, if she truly cared about Luke, she wouldn't be making such an expression. She should be burning with anger towards me for restraining him. But that wasn't the case. It was clear that she was going out of her way to demean me unnecessarily. Probably to bring me down and claim Luke for herself. I didn't think everyone's silence meant they simply believed her words. As the daughter of the executive director, Carrie had always used her father's influence to do as she pleased. She would push unwanted tasks onto others and take credit for their achievements. Until Jimmy Johnson became the manager and started keeping a close eye on her, there were hardly any people who could stand up to her. Although her blatant tyranny had diminished recently, her influence hadn't disappeared completely. That's why everyone was too afraid to oppose her and remained silent. I believed that was also a significant factor in their behavior. I didn't want anyone else to suffer because of me. So, I had no choice but to do my work without arguing back.
I knew I'd find you here, Emma.
During lunchtime, I had escaped from the uncomfortable atmosphere and was on the rooftop of the office building when Luke approached me. He was the only one who knew that I would come here to look at the town and sky whenever I felt down, so it wasn't surprising that he found me. The problem was that once again, Carrie was standing right beside him. She had shamelessly intruded on a secret that belonged only to Luke and me. And Luke said nothing about it. Amid the surging desire to scream inside, Carrie declared,
What's with that tragic heroine face? Isn't it all your own fault? My fault?
I muttered in disbelief, taken aback by her unexpected words.
You've always acted so serious and hardworking since way back. Because you, my colleague, were like that, I had no choice but to feel pressured not to slack off, she ranted, her voice dripping with venom. What?
I could barely process her accusations, my mind reeling from the shock. I could barely process her accusations, my mind reeling from the shock.
So even though I harassed you constantly, you, the shameless and brazen one, never quit. It was truly appalling, she continued, her words cutting deep into my heart.
I had always thought her behavior was just complaining. To think it was actually harassment all along. If I'm being honest, I had considered that possibility, but hearing it directly from her mouth was a devastating blow.
That's...
I trailed off, at a loss for words. To top it all off, she had snatched Luke, the man I had my sights on, right from under my nose and gotten engaged to him. As I stood there, unable to respond to her string of self-centered remarks, she made no effort to hide the ugly distortion of her face.
I couldn't stand it anymore. I decided to put you, the eyesore, in your place.
Occasionally laughing through her nose, she continued to expose her ill intentions.
I actually wanted to break you two up right before the wedding, but, well, I suppose it's good that I saved myself the trouble. That's just...
I stammered, struggling to form a coherent response.
Let me make this clear, he is on my side,
she declared triumphantly, her eyes gleaming with a wicked satisfaction. Even though my mind had already grasped the nature of Luke and Carrie's relationship, I found myself desperately turning my gaze towards Luke, clinging to some faint hope. However, that hope was swiftly betrayed by none other than Luke himself. I'm sorry, Emma. I want to climb the corporate ladder faster, he admitted, his words a dagger to my heart. With his confession, I understood. Luke had prioritized his own desires and ambitions over me. And my suspicion was correct.
If I date Carrie, I can get promoted. That's what it comes down to.
Luke confirmed, acknowledging that he had taken Carrie's bait when she dangled her influence as the executive director's daughter in front of him. She had promised to ask her father for his promotion if he chose her over me.
You're not a good match for him. I, who was always meant to be at the top and pull him up, am the one who's truly suited for him,
Carrie declared, her words dripping with condescension. Perhaps she was right. I had simply been dragged along by him, relying on his existence and taking it for granted. Maybe I hadn't genuinely tried to understand how he felt about that.
So, with that being said, losers should just cry in the corner,
Carrie sneered, her lips curling into a cruel smile. A loser. Maybe that's exactly what I am. I'm completely useless. Even if I desperately raised my voice here, neither Luke nor Carrie would change their minds.
In that case, I suppose I can allow you to stay at the company. It is a favor for Luke, after all,
she conceded, her tone laced with mock generosity. Sorry, that's about all I can do for you. It doesn't seem like you and I can climb the corporate ladder together, Emma, Luke added, driving the final nail into the coffin of our relationship. I had unknowingly relied too much on him. Stunned by their joint declaration, I stood there in a daze, unable to move or think clearly. I didn't even notice when they left, too shocked to muster any semblance of a rebuttal. From that point on, I was treated like a pariah within the company for a while. Although Luke paid for the wedding cancellation fees, it seemed trivial compared to the situation I found myself in. It appeared that if you repeated lies and nonsense often enough, they would eventually be accepted as truth. Carrie's words had spread to other departments and were being taken as fact. As a result, the gazes directed at me from those around me grew cold, and I had no choice but to shrink into myself. Was crying in the corner all I could do, just as she had said? As I pondered this, lost in thought, I found myself on the rooftop once again, watching the sunset. That's when I heard a familiar voice. Are you okay, Emma? I wondered how long he had been there without me noticing. Jimmy asked, standing a short distance away from me. Jimmy. My voice, barely managing to respond, sounded far more exhausted than I had realized. Witnessing my words and demeanor, Jimmy lowered his head slightly. You're not okay, are you? I'm sorry. He apologized, his tone sincere and understanding. Jimmy's voice hadn't changed at all from before, even now when the attitudes of those around me had completely shifted. There was a strange sense of reassurance in that consistency. Perhaps it was because of that, but suddenly, an unidentifiable emotion welled up inside me. Before I knew it, I found myself speaking my mind while tears streamed down my face.
I can't take it anymore, Please, just let me quit.
I pleaded, my voice breaking with desperation. I had thought I could endure it. I had wanted to keep trying. But I had reached my limit. I couldn't stay here any longer. In response to my heartfelt words, Jimmy replied in a gentle voice, "If that's what you want, Emma, I have no right to say otherwise. But before that, I'd like to make one suggestion, if you'll allow me." "What is it?" I asked, curiosity piqued despite my emotional state. "Why don't you try applying to another company?" he proposed, his words catching me off guard.
"What?"
I blurted out, my eyes widening in surprise at the sudden suggestion. With his expression and voice remaining calm, Jimmy continued,
"Actually, I've been approached about it for a while now."
According to Jimmy, our parent company was apparently launching a new business venture. They were searching for talented individuals from each of their group companies to join the new department. Jimmy was one of those chosen, and he had been granted permission to select someone he thought was a perfect fit to transfer with him.
"If I had to choose someone, Emma, it would be you. There's no one else. That's what I believe,"
he stated, his words filled with conviction. "Why me?" I asked, confusion evident in my voice. If anyone was considered a promising candidate in our company, it would be Luke. That's what I thought as I posed the question.
"Starting something new requires a lot of new methodologies. But that alone isn't enough,"
Jimmy replied, catching me off guard with his unexpected response.
"To accomplish something extraordinary, a solid foundation is also important, don't you think?"
he continued, his words resonating with me. I nodded in agreement, acknowledging the truth in his statement. Seeing my reaction, Jimmy nodded back with a satisfied expression before continuing.
"In that regard, with your diligence and perseverance, I believe you can build that foundation." "That's what I think,"
he asserted, his confidence in me unwavering. "Do you really think so?" I asked, doubt creeping into my voice.
"Absolutely,"
Jimmy affirmed, nodding firmly. But I couldn't bring myself to believe it so easily. "I don't think I can," I admitted, my insecurities laid bare.
"But I believe you can,"
Jimmy countered, his faith in me unwavering. I wondered what basis Jimmy had for his belief. Driven by anxiety and skepticism, I asked once more, "Why do you believe in me?"
"Because even when you're not in your desired department, you don't let it get to you. You face your work head-on with dedication and sincerity,"
he explained, his eyes reflecting nothing but honesty. At first, I thought he might be saying this out of consideration for my situation, but that wasn't the case. While that might be a factor, it didn't seem to be his primary reason. My manager was genuinely appreciating my abilities and inviting me based on that. Realizing this, I found myself trembling with a joy I hadn't felt in a long time. "Emma, I'm sorry," Jimmy said, bowing his head deeply in apology.
"What? What's gotten into you all of a sudden?"
I asked, taken aback by his unexpected gesture.
"I've been making various arrangements to facilitate your transfer, and because of that, I wasn't able to properly help you out,"
he explained, his voice tinged with regret. Come to think of it, I hadn't seen much of Jimmy since the day I returned to work after learning about Luke's infidelity. Looking back on it now, he was probably busy identifying the next candidate for the manager position. To be honest, I had wondered why he wasn't there for me during such a difficult time. But seeing him express remorse now, any trivial grudges I held seemed to vanish into thin air. Instead, I felt ashamed of myself for harboring resentment towards him.
"It's all right, Jimmy. Please don't worry about it,"
I reassured him, my voice sincere and forgiving. "I'm grateful to hear you say that." "So, what do you think?" he asked, his eyes searching mine for an answer. As we exchanged those words, I felt the dark, heavy feelings within me rapidly dissipating along with my grudges. Even in my current state, there were still people who saw my worth and appreciated me. If that was the case, I couldn't afford to wallow in self-pity any longer.
I understand.
I said, taking a deep breath and straightening my posture.
If you're willing to have me, despite my shortcomings, then I would be honored to accept your offer,
I declared, turning to face Jimmy and bowing deeply, pouring all of my gratitude into the gesture. Despite your shortcomings? Nonsense, he exclaimed, a delighted smile spreading across his face in response to my answer. As I said before, it has to be you, he reiterated, his conviction unwavering. It has to be me, I repeated, a hint of disbelief in my voice.
Yes. That's why you need to have more confidence in yourself. You're far more amazing than you give yourself credit for,
Jimmy asserted, his words striking a chord deep within me. His encouragement stirred something in the depths of my heart, urging me to break free from my current state. Carrie, who had looked down on me as inferior. Luke, who believed that I couldn't succeed alongside him. I had to prove them both wrong. I refused to let things end this way. Thanks to Jimmy, the smoldering embers within me were now burning brightly, ready to ignite into a roaring flame. Riding on the momentum of those feelings, I found myself heading to a particular place after work. A place I had actively avoided until now. But I wouldn't run away anymore. With that resolve in my heart, I moved forward.
Emma? What brings you here?
It was Luke's apartment. He was surprised by my unexpected visit. Come to think of it, I had forgotten to inform him beforehand. Of course, that wasn't the only reason for his surprise. After being so harshly rejected, the fact that I had gone out of my way to see him again was likely enough to catch him off guard.
I'm sorry. I should have contacted you in advance.
I apologized, my voice steady and composed. That's not a problem, but... Luke's voice still trembled slightly. It was only natural, considering I hadn't completely moved on in the truest sense.
Well, if it isn't the loser.
Carrie emerged from the depths of the apartment, her voice dripping with disdain.
What business could you possibly have here? Did you come to apologize for causing trouble?
She taunted, her words brimming with confidence and a clear provocation. Her words served as a stark reminder of the fact that she had stolen Luke away from me. As I witnessed the painful reality before me, I felt the urge to turn away and escape from it all. The desire to run away threatened to overwhelm me. But I knew I had to change, starting from this moment. I couldn't let the opportunity Jimmy had given me go to waste. With renewed determination etched into my heart, I lifted my face, which had been on the verge of drooping, and declared, I came to collect my belongings that I left here. They'll only get in your way if I leave them, right? I see, he responded, a hint of guilt flickering across his face.
That saves me the trouble. I was planning on throwing everything out as trash anyway.
Carrie chimed in, laughing condescendingly at me. Her words stung, and it wasn't as if I didn't feel angry. But I had to overcome this hurdle if I wanted to start anew. I needed to become a version of myself that could prove these two wrong. So, instead of letting their taunts get to me, I put on a smile and told them, That's actually perfect timing.
What?
Carrie's eyes widened in surprise, clearly caught off guard by my unexpected reaction. Luke, too, looked slightly taken aback. I'll tidy up my things so they don't end up as garbage. Do you mind if I come inside for a bit? I asked, my voice steady and composed. Okay, sure, but... Luke hesitated, his confusion evident.
What a boring response.
Carrie scoffed, rolling her eyes. Perhaps she had expected me to burst into tears and run away again. If that was the case, then I had managed to deliver a small, yet satisfying counterattack. Sorry for being so boring. I apologized, my tone laced with a hint of sarcasm. With a slightly elevated mood, I stepped into the apartment. Unsurprisingly, the room itself hadn't undergone any significant changes. The only noticeable difference was the presence of a few unfamiliar items, likely belonging to Carrie. Just a short while ago, being here had felt so natural. I had been looking forward to my future and marriage with Luke. How had things turned out this way? A small part of me still harbored those thoughts deep within. But that was all in the past now. If I were being honest, I hadn't fully come to terms with it yet. However, to ensure that I could move on someday, I deliberately chose to define it as a part of my past. With that mindset, I began to gather my belongings scattered throughout the room. My favorite mug, cushions, and the photos commemorating our relationship. As I collected these items, I also picked up the various memories associated with them. It was unlikely that they would ever be used or displayed again. I wasn't sure if I would be able to throw them away. Perhaps I would end up stuffing them all into a cardboard box and sealing them away. In hindsight, it might have been less troublesome to let them dispose of everything. Nevertheless, this was something I needed to do. To draw a line under my memories with him, using my own hands. And to declare war on Carrie and Luke.
Well then, sorry for the disturbance,
I said, my voice firm and unwavering. I had procured a reasonably sized cardboard box from a supermarket along the way. The memories of Luke and I fit neatly inside, taking up only a portion of the space. I had worried that they might not even fit into a single box, so the realization left me feeling a bit deflated.
You were such an eyesore. Don't ever come back here again,
Carrie spat, her condescending gaze unchanged. But I had no intention of losing to her anymore. Meeting her gaze directly, I declared, "Don't worry. I won't ever come back."
Keep putting on a brave face, if that makes you feel better,
Carrie retorted, seemingly taken aback by my unwavering eye contact. The fact that she was getting flustered over something so trivial struck me as somewhat amusing.
What's so funny?
She demanded, her voice laced with irritation. She demanded, her voice laced with irritation. It's nothing important, don't worry about it. I replied dismissively. In reality, the things I had been so afraid of turned out to be far less significant than I had imagined. By facing them head-on, I had come to that realization. Mustering up the courage to come here had been the right decision. Luke looked as if he wanted to say something, but I turned on my heel and started walking away. Carrie seemed to be making a fuss behind me, but I no longer registered her noise. At that moment, I felt a sense of refreshing lightness, as if I could walk anywhere without a care in the world. With a renewed spirit, I embarked on my new duties in a new environment alongside Jimmy. During this transition, I made a complete shift from sales to an administrative role, which had been my original preference when I first joined the company. To be precise, it was a combination of mainly administrative work with some sales responsibilities. This decision had been Jimmy's call, and it proved to be a resounding success.
This is something only you can do, Emma. I'm counting on you,
he had said, placing his trust in me.
Yes, I'll give it my best shot,
I replied enthusiastically. Having spent years working in sales, a role I was never quite comfortable with, I had gained unique insights. As a result, I became a bridge between the sales and administrative departments, often rushing between the two as a pinch hitter when needed. The new work style that Jimmy had envisioned for me was a perfect match, both for myself and for the workplace as a whole. It streamlined the overall operation of the office, and the business took off smoothly. To be honest, I had always struggled with self-confidence. But achieving great success alongside him had erased those doubts. I was filled with nothing but gratitude. Of course, not everything was sunshine and rainbows. There were plenty of challenges and unpleasant experiences along the way. However, compared to the betrayal of my fiancé and the mistreatment from my colleagues, those hurdles seemed insignificant. Having overcome that pain, there was nothing I couldn't conquer. That confidence surged within me. As I navigated various obstacles, I gained the trust and admiration of many people who believed in me.
You're really something, Emma. We can pretty much leave everything in your hands and know it'll be fine.
Jimmy would often say, his voice filled with admiration. I appreciate your trust, but Jimmy and everyone else, please make sure to do your own work properly, okay? I would tease, a playful warning in my tone. Those were words I could never have uttered back when I lacked self-confidence. It was a joke I couldn't have made without the strength to trust others. During breaks between work, I would share laughter with him and my colleagues over such small exchanges. It was precisely because we had a relationship where we could create a warm atmosphere that we could also openly express our opinions without hesitation when the need arose. Those were fulfilling days, filled with a combination of purpose and enjoyment that I could never have imagined in my previous workplace. I was truly grateful for accepting his invitation that day. It was because I had found the courage to take that step forward that I was able to make such significant progress. As I poured my heart and soul into living each day to the fullest, time flew by in the blink of an eye, and before I knew it, 5 years had passed.
Hello everyone, it's been a while.
I greeted my former colleagues on the day I returned to the department where I had once been betrayed and mistreated. I had successfully completed all the roles I needed to fulfill at my previous assignment. But I hadn't just returned empty-handed.
Although I am still inexperienced, I will do my utmost to contribute to the department's success as the department manager,
I announced, having come back in a higher position than before. Perhaps because of that, the people who had once treated me coldly seemed somewhat awkward. However, I had no intention of holding grudges against them. I understood that given their position at the time, they didn't have much choice. But there were also some individuals who didn't fall into that category.
Don't be ridiculous.
Carrie's voice, which I hadn't heard in a long time, now only evoked a sense of nostalgia. The owner of that voice, the one who had once brought about my downfall, no longer possessed the composure she once had. Luke, standing beside her, had also lost some weight and seemed to lack his former vigor. It was understandable, considering the difficult position they found themselves in after Jimmy and I had been transferred. The person Jimmy had chosen as his successor was, much like himself, a principled individual. As a result, they were strict with Carrie and the others who tried to flaunt their status as the executive director's daughter. Apparently, she still attempted to wield her authority. But it was to no avail, as the new manager turned out to be a distant relative of the company president. Jimmy had likely chosen his successor with this in mind, anticipating such a situation. Consequently, they were no longer able to get away with the selfish behavior they had previously pushed through. The lies they told using their influence were no longer effective, and they were met with cold treatment and isolation from those who had been outraged by their actions towards me. As a result, both Luke and Carrie remained ordinary employees, far from the path of promotion. It was no wonder they were displeased by my return, having been promoted myself. I had expected them to lash out at me.
As if I would ever work under a piece of trash like you. Right, everyone?
Carrie exclaimed, making exaggerated gestures as she appealed to those around her. However, she was met with nothing but cold stares from her colleagues. Did she not realize how drastically the situation had changed from before? Even if she did, given her current circumstances, it was likely a reflection of her true feelings. She couldn't bear the thought of being subordinate to someone she had once considered beneath her. That was probably the sole reason behind her outburst. But such selfish behavior had no place in the professional world.
Your personal opinion is irrelevant,
I stated calmly.
Excuse me?
Carrie's voice rose to a shrill pitch. I responded in a matter-of-fact tone.
My appointment as department manager is based on an official order. If you cannot accept that, I suggest you resign.
My perfectly reasonable words were met with silence from Carrie, but then Luke spoke up.
Emma, let's start over.
His words were completely out of context and hardly appropriate for a workplace setting, earning him stunned and exasperated looks from those around us. Luke must have been aware of this, which could only mean that he was so desperate that he couldn't help but say it. For someone as ambitious as Luke, his current situation must have been utterly humiliating.
With you, I can.
His desperation was palpable, but it wasn't the right time or place for such a conversation. If anything, it was something he should have said long ago. I couldn't help but think that way upon hearing his words. But now, they held no meaning whatsoever. They were nothing more than a private conversation, so I cut him off mercilessly.
Excuse me, but please refrain from personal conversations. We are in the middle of a morning assembly.
I reminded him sternly. But he struggled to find the right words, desperately trying to hold on to something. To put an end to his attempts, I stated the truth.
Moreover, I am already engaged, so I cannot fulfill your expectations,
I declared, my voice unwavering.
No way!
Both Carrie and Luke were left speechless, their expressions dumbfounded. I proceeded to deliver my final demand to them in a businesslike manner.
Carrie Smith and Luke Johnson, you will receive the appropriate orders in due course. What? What do you mean? Until then, I expect you to fulfill your duties as employees in a manner that does not bring shame to the company. Now then, everyone, let's do our best today,
I concluded, my tone firm and resolute. Immediately after, the two of them seemed to cry out in protest, but their voices were drowned out by the applause that erupted as soon as I made my announcement. Witnessing this scene unfold before their eyes, they were rendered speechless, unable to do anything but stand there with stunned expressions on their faces. A few days later, it came to light that Carrie's father, the executive director, had been embezzling company funds and harassing employees for decades. He was promptly fired. At the same time, the various problematic behaviors, acts of harassment, and theft of credit that Carrie had been engaging in, simply because she was the executive director's daughter, were also exposed. Among these revelations were the preferential treatment she had given to Luke and the misuse of company funds by the two of them. As a result of these compounded offenses, both of them were naturally terminated from the company. But that's not the end of the story. It was also discovered that Luke, in his haste to climb the corporate ladder, had been using forceful tactics with clients, resulting in complaints. However, the executive director had been covering up these incidents. He probably intended it as a gift to his daughter's favorite and his future son-in-law. But the price they paid for their actions was steep. The company viewed these acts as unforgivable behaviors that damaged their social credibility and decided to sue the three individuals involved. The verdict has not been reached yet, but with ample evidence and testimonies, Carrie and the others' defeat is practically certain. In addition to paying a hefty sum in damages, the three of them will likely face significant challenges in finding new employment in the future. Perhaps it was due to the immense psychological toll they endured, but when I saw Carrie and Luke at the trial, they looked utterly worn out, a far cry from their appearance 5 years ago. I don't know what will become of them, and frankly, I no longer care. I can only hope that they will lead their lives in a way that doesn't cause trouble for anyone else. As for me, I got married before their trial even began. My husband is Jimmy. He is now the general manager at the company where I was previously assigned, having chosen to stay there. Through the ups and downs we experienced together during my time there, I remembered how I had once been attracted to him. And I realized that, unlike back then, he was no longer an unreachable presence in my life.
Will you marry me?
I mustered up the courage to propose to him. Jimmy said yes without hesitation, but then he gave me a complex expression that was a mix of embarrassment and slight dismay. I feel kind of bad about this, he admitted, his voice tinged with a hint of awkwardness.
What's wrong?
I asked, puzzled by his reaction. I feel kind of bad about this.
I was planning to propose to you myself.
You know, since I heard that Luke had done it before, Jimmy explained. He had wanted to overwrite the pain I had suffered in the past by proposing to me himself. But maybe this way was better for you, Emma, he added, his words filled with understanding. Knowing that Jimmy cared for me so deeply, to the point of considering my well-being above all else. I was overjoyed that our hearts were truly connected. And so, we got married. We are now living a blissful newlywed life. Honestly, the love we share is more than words can describe. Even though we work at different places now, I don't have the slightest bit of anxiety. Because he is the one who sought me out and chose me, even after witnessing me at my lowest point when my spirit was broken. I reaffirmed my determination to strive every day to be the best version of myself, worthy of such a wonderful husband.
Grandma, this is Mia.
Kevin's girlfriend, Mia, seemingly quiet woman with fair skin, greeted us with a nervous smile. I quickly ushered them inside the house. It was for a meet and greet that Kevin had brought her over, and my daughter-in-law, Chloe, was in good spirits, eagerly asking how the two had met.
Evelyn, hurry up and serve them some coffee.
Chloe's mood had soured just minutes earlier. The reason was Kevin had first told his parents that Mia was pregnant. I was so shocked I lost my voice. Chloe showed some discomfort at the fact they were having a shotgun wedding.
We're serious about making this work. We know we're young, but please, allow us to marry.
Both were sincerely asking for their parents' permission to marry. As a grandmother, I realized it was not my place to comment and silently watched, moved by their demeanor. However, Chloe made a visibly displeased face and waved her hand in front of her own face.
A shotgun wedding is so tacky. Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you have to marry, right? Isn't that right, Evelyn?
Suddenly turned to me.
What?
I let out, as Chloe directed a sardonic smile my way.
Yes, it's true. Just because there's a baby on the way doesn't necessarily mean marriage is a must.
Kevin looked momentarily saddened. I had anticipated such a reaction. But you two are choosing to move forward because of this baby. Whatever the case, it's something Kevin and Mia have decided together. No one else has the right to object. Maybe what we can do, Chloe, is to support them, don't you think? Chloe downed her mug of coffee in one go. Evelyn, get me a refill, please. She handed it over, then crossed her arms and sighed.
Well, opposing it is futile anyway. So, when are you planning the wedding? What? Oh, considering Mia's condition, we'd like to do it sooner rather than later. So, this means we're finally getting a break from parenting.
Chloe said reflectively, then turned towards me in the kitchen.
Now that we're going to be living as a family, we won't be needing a housekeeper anymore.
Can you leave?
What?
The sudden words from Chloe took everyone by surprise. My son Charles, Kevin, and Mia were all left speechless.
What am I supposed to do now?
My name is Evelyn. I'm a 70-year-old grandmother. I live with my only son Charles, his wife Chloe, and their family in a 2-generation home. Though it may seem happy from the outside, I've felt somewhat downcast since losing my husband a few years ago. Chloe, my son's wife, is outspoken and tends to say whatever comes to her mind, and while we're not on bad terms, I've felt her using me for convenience. When Chloe goes out with friends, she takes for granted that I'll do the household chores and even asks me to drive her to the station. Chloe seems to think living together in a 2-generation home is her way of showing filial piety. Contrary to my wish for a quiet life after my husband's death, I find myself entangled in a complicated situation.
Come on, get up already.
From the bedroom of my son and his wife, Chloe's almost shrieking voice can be heard. Ah, she seems to be in a bad mood again. Though Charles was working till late last night, he was woken up at the usual time on his day off and hurried to get ready to go out. I quietly spoke to Charles when I encountered him in the washroom. Charles, are you okay? I'm fine, got about 5 hours of sleep. Charles smiled gently at me through the mirror while drying his face with a towel. Lately, Charles has been looking pale, and I've been worried. Despite my concerns, Charles would brush it off with, "I'm fine," which was something my husband used to say. He kept working until one day, he suddenly collapsed and passed away. That memory is always with me, and I wish Charles could rest more on his days off. Loud footsteps approached. Chloe appears at the bathroom, frowning and visibly annoyed.
How long are you going to wash your face? Hurry up, I'll be late for my meeting with friends.
I'm sorry, I'll change right away. The meek Charles quickly left to change his clothes. Meanwhile, Chloe turned to me and handed over a note.
Evelyn, this is the shopping list for today.
Yes, I got it. Have fun with your friends.
The weather seems nice today.
Please wash the bed sheets as well. Chloe left without waiting for my reply. After watching her brazen departure, I sighed deeply. Even when my husband was alive, Chloe had always been bold in speaking her mind to us. In the beginning of our living together, "Don't hold back," I had said to Chloe, but as time went on, her aggressive nature became more apparent. Cooking, which Chloe disliked, fell to me. If she disliked a dish, she would push the plate away saying,
"I told you I can't eat this, didn't I?"
Or she would complain about wrinkles in the laundry I had folded. Still, since she was chosen by my son Charles, I tried to keep a quiet smile and avoid causing trouble, but since my husband passed, Chloe's attitude has become more extreme, tiring my spirit.
Evelyn, you're staying home all day, right? Make sure the bath is ready for me when I get back.
Chloe said this without even looking at me as she left the house. Chloe goes out with her friends almost every week. Since the beginning of her marriage, she has seldom done housework or childcare, focusing more on her appearance and spending freely. She's very sociable, making acquaintances in various places. There were many instances that could have led to suspicions of infidelity when Chloe was younger, but Charles, she wouldn't do that. Trusted her without a doubt, so I didn't pursue it. I was surprised to see Charles, looking sleepy as he entered with his hands full of confectionery boxes upon returning from seeing off Chloe. "Oh, this? It's for Chloe's class reunion next week. She's planning to give them out."
Really? All of this?
Chloe doesn't want to be embarrassed.
She keeps saying she doesn't want people to think we're living with our parents because we're struggling for money.
I'm sorry, but just let her do as she pleases. Of course, it's all right, don't worry. Sitting in the chair, I felt an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. Eventually, I took the list Chloe had given me and went out for the shopping. My familiar shoes felt heavier than usual. Perhaps due to my age, I often feel a dull pain in my knees with every step. Yet, imagining Chloe's likely snide remarks about wasting gas, I gently stroked my knees, encouraging them to keep going. Returning home, sweating and carrying shopping bags in both hands, I set down the bags at the entrance and stretched my bent back when my grandson Kevin appeared. "Oh, Grandma, welcome back. No wonder you weren't home, you went out shopping." Kevin frowned slightly as he looked at the groceries I had bought. Kevin, the only son of Charles and Chloe, had become less visible around the house since starting his job last spring. Though we live together, he's often busy with work, coming home late and leaving early in the morning. And on his days off, he dresses up and goes out. It's rare for Kevin to be at home during the daytime on a weekend. Before I could even take off my shoes, Kevin took the shopping bags to the kitchen and began putting things away quickly. I glimpsed his expression and sensed a happy atmosphere.
"Did something good happen?"
Kevin smiled as he carefully placed eggs from a carton into the refrigerator.
"Actually, there's someone I want to introduce to you." I'm thinking of bringing her home next week.
Introduce someone? As I processed what that meant, I realized my grandson had reached the age for such things. Introduce someone? Could it be what I'm thinking? It might be. Grandma, there's something I've been thinking about for a long time. Something you've been thinking about? Yes. I can't talk about it just yet, but I promise I will someday. But first, would you meet the person I want to introduce? Kevin spoke with excitement, and I couldn't help but smile. I was curious about what he had been thinking about, but more so about the kind of woman he would bring home. Growing up, Kevin had never brought a girlfriend home. His absence from home since starting his job, I realized, might have been due to dating. For the first time in a while, I forgot about the usual annoyances and hummed a tune while cleaning. Of course, I had informed Chloe and Charles about this matter, but Charles only muttered, "Marriage, huh?" while Chloe seemed unamused. On their next day off, Kevin brought the woman he wanted to introduce to our home. Chloe had asked me to clean up the front of the house, and while I was sprinkling water, I became a bit wary when an unfamiliar car stopped, but seeing my grandson waving from the driver's seat with a smile, I felt relieved. The car was a rental. Perhaps Kevin had gone to the trouble of renting a car to pick her up. I almost laughed inwardly, thinking Kevin must be quite smitten.
Grandma, this is Mia.
I couldn't help but smile at the sight of my grandson's happy face as he introduced the woman next to him. Kevin's girlfriend, Mia, seemingly quiet woman with fair skin, greeted us with a nervous smile. I quickly led the two inside. It was for a meet and greet that Kevin had brought her over, and Chloe, in a good mood, eagerly asked how the two had become acquainted. Chloe and Charles sat at a table set for four, facing Kevin and Mia, while I prepared coffee for everyone in the kitchen.
Evelyn, hurry up and serve them some coffee.
Chloe's mood had turned sour just minutes before. The reason was that Kevin had first told his parents that Mia was pregnant. I was so shocked I lost my voice. The previously warm atmosphere froze in an instant, with Kevin showing a seriousness which he usually does not. Chloe displayed some discomfort at the fact they were having a shotgun wedding.
We're serious about making this work. We might be young, but please, allow us to marry.
Both were earnestly asking their parents' permission to marry. As a grandmother, I realized it was not my place to comment and silently watched, moved by their demeanor. Watching Kevin plead before his parents, I felt tears welling up. Of course, we support your marriage. For the baby's sake, it's better to marry soon and settle down mentally.
Thanks, Dad,
Kevin said with a smile, looking at Mia. Chloe made a visibly displeased face and waved her hand in front of her own face.
Shotgun weddings are so tacky. Can you even explain how this happened, Mia?
Taken aback by such an unexpected question, Mia was surprised.
What?
And looked down at the table. Kevin quickly placed his hand on her shoulder. Times have changed, this kind of marriage isn't unusual anymore. Besides, we have our own ways of thinking and are ready to work hard.
Kevin, you offered to marry because Mia got pregnant, didn't you? Are you sure this is a well-thought-out decision? Our relationship was serious from the start, aiming for marriage. It just happened that the baby gave us a good opportunity. Just because there's a baby doesn't mean you have to marry, right? Isn't that right, Evelyn?
Chloe suddenly turned to me.
What?
I let out, as Chloe directed a sardonic smile my way. Recalling a TV segment on single mothers we watched as a family recently, indeed. Having a baby doesn't necessarily lead to marriage, but this situation seemed different. Yes, it's true.
Just because there's a baby on the way doesn't mean marriage is a must.
Kevin looked momentarily saddened. I had anticipated such a reaction. So, I had prepared my next words carefully, thinking I'd proudly tell Kevin about it later. But, you two are choosing to move forward because of this baby. Whatever the case, it's a decision made by Kevin and Mia together. No one else has the right to object. Maybe what we can do, Chloe, is to support them, don't you think?
An old person making irresponsible statements.
What would she say next? Everyone probably wondered, but Chloe downed her mug of coffee in one go.
Evelyn, get me a refill, please.
She handed it over, then crossed her arms and sighed.
Well, opposing it is futile anyway. So, when are you planning the wedding? What? Oh, considering Mia's condition, we'd like to do it sooner rather than later. So, this means we're finally getting a break from parenting.
Chloe said wistfully, then turned to face me, who was standing in the kitchen.
Since the family will be living together from now on, can we ask you, the no longer needed housekeeper, to leave? What? My son is getting married, and we want to live with just our cherished family from now on.
Charles, taken aback by Chloe's sudden words, and both Kevin and Mia were left speechless in shock.
Once Kevin's child is born, they'll likely live here for a while, right? We don't want to trouble you with the baby's night crying.
No, I'm fine with that. If there's anything I can do.
I can't think of any advantage to living with someone who's likely to become a care-dependent elderly. You're no longer needed, so could you please leave?
Feeling as if my heart was being torn out, I didn't want to worry Kevin and the others, so I—
You're absolutely right.
Tried to smile bravely. At that time, I didn't take Chloe's words seriously. But day by day, Chloe's efforts to drive me out of the house became more blatant. Please leave as soon as possible. She kept on saying so. When I consulted with Charles, the timid man could only hold his head and stay silent. What was especially shocking was the realization that Chloe was almost entirely in control of the inheritance from my husband, including the house. My husband, being a man of small desires, had left everything to our son Charles with the intention that all his property would be passed on to him. Effectively, I had no assets or property of my own. And since Charles was under Chloe's thumb, I was stunned to find myself stripped of both my home and inheritance.
What should I do now?
I murmured while looking through old albums of my late husband and I in the middle of the night. He was always gentle, never angry, just calm. Was it his nature that allowed Chloe to become so selfish? If so, I felt like the cause was both my husband and myself. Months passed. Despite the daily harassment from Chloe, unable to leave, I lived enduring it all. One day, while I was taking a shower, the water suddenly turned cold. I worried it was broken, but it seemed Chloe had turned off the water heater's power. Thinking she probably didn't know I was in the bath, I turned the power back on, but it was immediately turned off again. Realizing it was harassment.
Could you not turn off the power while I'm bathing?
I asked.
It's a waste of electricity.
Only to be shouted at. There were even times in the dead of winter when I had to rinse off with cold water. Exhausted, I consulted Charles.
Could you bathe while Chloe is out?
But he could only weakly suggest. Wondering how he became so spineless, I sighed in disbelief. Even as Chloe said with a snide smile every time we met.
Please rent an apartment and live there as soon as possible.
I was powerless to do anything. Amidst these oppressive days, a piece of bright news was brought in. Mia had finally given birth to a healthy baby. For a moment, Chloe and I celebrated wholeheartedly, tears in our eyes as we laughed together.
Now, if only you'd leave the house quickly, I'd truly be happy.
Chloe's smile suddenly turned cold as she spoke to me. I doubted the woman's character before me. Charles looked away, pretending to be engrossed in the newspaper, as if he had nothing to do with it. Though Chloe was the one who strongly wished for Kevin and his wife to stay at our home, she wanted nothing to do with the baby's care. I did everything I could to help Mia, who always deeply thanked me despite being overwhelmed with caring for the baby. "Thank you so much for everything. Don't worry about it. You're going through the hardest time right now, and if there's anything I can do to help, I will." That was a heartfelt sentiment from me. After a particularly busy few months, Kevin suddenly said to me,
"I have something important to tell you." "I'm listening,"
I responded while preparing dinner in the kitchen. Without stopping my chopping, I waited for Kevin to speak.
"Grandma, I want to talk to you alone. There's a place I want you to come to this Sunday. Let's keep it a secret from Mom and Dad."
My hand holding the knife stopped. A secret from Chloe. When I looked at Kevin, he had a subtle smile as if trying to hide his joy. It was a look he often had as a child when he was plotting something secretly to make me happy. Kevin had always been close to me and my late husband since he was little. Looking back, maybe Chloe felt that her only son's affections were being stolen by me and my husband. That wouldn't have been fun for Chloe. Probably that feeling continues, and Kevin realized that when I'm with Chloe, I feel intimidated and can't speak my mind. I felt dearly loved by my kind grandson and his wife. Next Sunday, Kevin, Mia, and the baby led me to a newly built apartment, about a 10-minute walk from our house. Kevin shared that he had purchased this apartment before the baby was born as we walked. I was deeply surprised by his decisiveness to buy it without consulting Chloe, who had strongly suggested living together. "Sorry for making you walk, Grandma."
"I need to strengthen my legs anyway. This distance is nothing."
I lightly tapped my thin legs. Though just a 10-minute walk made my knees ache, I resolved not to mention it. The new apartment room was furnished simply, with boxes in the corner. Presumably belonging to Mia, who used to live alone before she got married. Kevin, familiar with the place, started making coffee in the kitchen, while Mia was putting the baby to sleep in another room.
"So, there's something I wanted to ask you."
Kevin began speaking seriously after a brief pause. The ticking of the clock on the wall seemed unusually loud.
"Would you live with us?"
I was so surprised by the sudden proposal that I nearly dropped my mug. Kevin looked at me earnestly. Thinking it was a joke, I returned a strained smile, and Kevin looked away distantly.
"Ever since I was a child, I couldn't stand seeing Mom treating you so badly."
"Well, your mom has a bit of a strong personality, but..."
"You're always being told to leave the house, aren't you? Dad won't talk back, and I can't stand to see you being treated so poorly by Mom anymore."
"What are you talking about? I'm being treated fine."
"Remember when I said I had someone I wanted to introduce to you? I've been thinking about something for a long time."
I vaguely remembered such a conversation. It was a while ago, but I distinctly remembered Kevin speaking with an implication of determination when he talked about getting married.
"I've been cherished by you and Grandpa since I was little, and I loved both of you. But somehow, I felt Mom was very rude towards you too. I've always watched the two of you and thought that when I grew up, I wanted to help. Kevin, did you really think that way?"
Kevin leaned forward decisively, looking into my eyes.
"Let's live together. There's no need for you to suffer alone in that house."
Unable to respond, Mia quietly returned and sat next to Kevin. Mia seemed to have listened to the conversation from the next room and looked at me solemnly, understanding the context. "Kevin told me about it. Would it be possible for you to live with us? That's a very kind offer. I'm truly happy. But I don't want to intrude on your newlywed life. That's not a problem at all. We need your help as an experienced parent, and it would be reassuring to have you live with us. And apparently, Mia had also been subjected to Chloe's harassment, feeling disgusted with her. Mia had been scorned for having a shotgun wedding and had been yelled at to quiet the baby during night crying. Initially, Mia had wanted to move back to her parents' house after giving birth, but
"So you hate being with me, I understand."
Chloe would say so every time, and Mia was tired of explaining.
"We're asking you. Please, would you live with us?"
Kevin and Mia pleaded together. Silently watching them, I felt tears streaming down my face.
"Thank you."
At that moment, no other words came to mind. Thus, it was decided that I would live with Kevin and his family. Of course, this news would soon reach Chloe's ears. As soon as I agreed to move in, Kevin apparently contacted Chloe and Charles. This was something I had asked Kevin to do. I was certain Chloe would strongly oppose to it. Telling myself this was my final battle, I left Kevin and his family at the apartment and headed home, opening the front door. As soon as I returned, Chloe summoned me to the living room and began yelling at me furiously.
"What do you mean you're going to live with Kevin? You're joking, right?"
No.
"I'm grateful for Kevin's offer and I've decided to accept it." "You're kidding, right?"
Chloe scoffed. Beside her, Charles frowned, his face troubled.
"Moving in with a newlywed couple? That doesn't sound sane. It's obvious you'll be a burden to Kevin."
I was worried about that too. But both of them have accepted me. I want to honestly accept their feelings.
"How could this be happening? You say something too, will you?"
Until then, Charles had been silent, now staring at Chloe with a vacant look in his eyes. His gaze was powerless, his body seemed to slump. "Chloe, I want a divorce."
"What? What is it with you all of a sudden?"
"I can't take this life anymore." Charles, usually quiet, raised his voice, causing Chloe to step back in surprise. He stood up, confronted Chloe directly, and glared at her with intense eyes.
"I can't continue with you. Not just your attitude towards me, but what you've done to Mom all this time, I could never forgive. What the heck? You're not used to getting angry, don't start now. The problem here right now is about Evelyn living with Kevin, isn't it? Mom is going to live with Kevin. That's the end of that discussion. Now, it's about you and me. I can't live with you anymore. Why is this suddenly coming up? I've been tolerating your attitude because Mom put up with it. But if Mom's moving out to live with Kevin, that's a different story. Now it's about you and me. I want to divorce you for all the suspicious acts and alleged affairs since we were young." "I haven't done anything like that."
Chloe, unusually flustered, looked away, her eyes darting around. Charles was gentle, but when he got angry as a child, he was unstoppable. Probably, Chloe had never seen Charles angry. When he did get angry, he would meticulously prepare to thoroughly defeat his opponent. As expected, Charles casually pulled out a large brown envelope from his company bag and spread its contents messily on the table. It was a report from an infidelity investigation conducted years ago, proving Chloe's affair without needing to read the details. Chloe was speechless and slumped into her seat. Without another word, Charles returned to his room. I noticed the living room curtains fluttering. So, the window was open. Feeling the gentle breeze coming through the window, I wondered if our embarrassing conversation had been overheard by the neighbors and massaged my temples. "Chloe, I can't say anything about you and Charles, but I hope you two can talk it through properly." Chloe just sat there silently, not answering. Then, it came to a lawsuit because Chloe refused to divorce, but the investigation into the affair was the final blow, and the divorce was finalized. I heard rumors that Chloe didn't change her aggressive self even after the divorce, and people gradually distanced themselves from her, leading her to live lonely days. By the time the divorce was finalized, I had already been living with Kevin and the others for 6 months now. I was feeling happy every day, helping with the care of my great-grandchild. Then one day,
Grandma, Dad's here.
returning from a walk with my great-grandchild, Charles was sitting in the apartment living room with a serious expression on his face. Seeing my son's face for the first time in 6 months since I left the house, he seemed somewhat healthier. After laying down the great-grandchild I was holding to bed, I smiled at Charles. "Have you been able to sleep since the divorce?"
Thanks to you, I've been getting about 8 hours.
Charles said this with a brighter expression than I had ever seen before. That's right, my son was someone who used to show such innocent smiles. Even though he has aged and grown a beard, I couldn't help but reminisce about his youthful appearance and laugh bitterly at the comparison to his present self.
So, what brings you here today? Don't tell me you want to live with us?
Well, that's actually why I came. Of course, I'll contribute to the new home expenses as well.
Of course. You're now able to properly manage your finances after the divorce. I've already settled things with Kevin and Mia. We're thinking of purchasing this apartment with the inheritance left by Dad, who passed away, in a way that the two of them would agree with. And from now on, I'll be able to protect you, Mom.
Originally, Charles was timid by nature but never was a weak man. I'm sure it was the result of him carefully considering his future and taking action after the divorce from Chloe. I looked at my son, my grandson, Mia, and my great-grandchild in turn and closed my eyes. The image of my late husband appeared behind my eyelids. With a peaceful expression.
Isn't that wonderful?
It seemed like my late husband was smiling. What's so wonderful about it? You've put me through so much trouble. If you had lived a little longer, maybe I would have been happier. Thinking this, I then reconsidered. My current happiness is thanks to Kevin and Mia, who wished for my happiness. My gratitude towards these two cannot be fully expressed in words. Suddenly, my great-grandchild started crying as if a fire had been lit, and I quickly rushed to the bed and picked him up. After rocking him a few times, my great-grandchild fell completely at ease in my arms and started breathing softly in sleep.
You're in your mid-30s and you're still single?
That's pretty sad.
My husband is both handsome and a genius.
Madison declares this with a sneer in the middle of the park, looking down on me with a smirk that seems to scream she's on the winning side. The crowd around us starts to murmur. Everyone looks at me with pity in their eyes. That must have been exactly what Madison wanted when she raised her voice. I've been subjected to Madison's cruelty before. I've managed to ignore it until now, but I can't take it anymore. I want to make her experience hell. The same, no, even worse hell than what I've been through. My name is Stella, a 36-year-old working mother. I'm a nurse, and despite the challenges, I find fulfillment in a job that allows me to help others.
Welcome home, Stella.
I'm back. You're home early today.
The meeting I had planned got rescheduled to tomorrow, so I ended up having some free time. Waiting for you at home like this is quite nice.
My husband, Stephen, is a calm and kind-hearted man. Like me, he's busy with work, but he always makes time for the family, and even after 13 years of marriage, I can feel his deep love for me.
Mom, you're home.
That's my son, Mark. He just started middle school this year and is 12 years old. He's still my adorable son, though he's starting to act a bit more grown up. I'm back. Oh, what's that wonderful smell?
Today's my turn to cook dinner. It'll be ready soon.
Mark has grown up to be a kind child, just like his dad. I could have never imagined my life to be like this 13 years ago. I'm always grateful to Stephen and Mark. One day, I found myself alone in a jewelry shop in Chinatown. I was there to get our wedding rings cleaned since they'd started to tarnish. I decided to go for the full restoration service, and they told me it would take about 2 to 3 weeks for the rings to be ready. After leaving my ring with them, I headed to the apparel shop next door. Stephen, knowing I don't often splurge on myself, had given me some money and said, "Buy yourself some clothes you like." While I was happily choosing clothes, someone called out to me.
"Hey, aren't you Stella?" "Huh?"
I turned around to see a short woman standing there. Her large, cat-like eyes and plump lips. Anyone would have called her cute at first glance, and her exaggerated head tilt was designed to charm. But that's all in the past now. As she's entered her late 30s, those gestures just seemed embarrassing.
"It's been a while. Remember me? As if you could forget, right? After all that happened. But, seriously, Stella, still single? I noticed you're not wearing a ring."
The woman basking in her own chatter is Madison. My friend, or rather, my former friend. Madison and I met in high school. I was a member of the volunteer club. It was a club that visited preschools to read picture books, and we learned sign language to communicate with the hearing impaired. I've always found joy and purpose in making people smile and doing something beneficial for others. And Madison was also a member of this club. Why did you join the volunteer club, Madison?
Just because. It seemed fun. Like sign language in Braille.
Madison, with her cute looks and a charm akin to a small animal, was popular among the boys. Wow, Stella, you've already learned that much sign language. You're really talented.
Really? Thank you.
Madison often complimented me, which meant a lot since I didn't have much confidence in myself. She also gave me advice on love.
"Hey, I'm going to start dating Brian." "It's all thanks to you, Madison." "Really? Congratulations."
Perhaps because of her popularity and continuous advice, I got a boyfriend for the first time in my life. His name was Brian. A senior in the top high school in the county, aiming for medical school, a true elite. Brian and I met at a cram school. We happened to be going the same way home, and after talking a few times, there was a mutual attraction, though he hadn't made a move. After consulting with Madison, she said, "You should be the one to go for it." So, I asked him out and we finally became a couple.
Madison, thank you so much.
No problem, we're best friends, right? We'll always be together. Our friendship came to an end when Madison stole my fiancé. After graduating high school, I went to nursing school and worked as a nurse at a hospital. Brian, having passed his medical licensing exams, proposed to me, and we got engaged. I was on top of the world. Then, I received a phone call. It was from Madison. After high school, Madison went to a distant university, got a job, and didn't return to our hometown. We only met once or twice a year. Madison mentioned she would be coming back home soon, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to introduce her to Brian, so the three of us planned to meet. On the day the three of us met, Madison's face lit up the moment she saw Brian.
Brian, you're so handsome. And such great taste in clothes, and plus you're a doctor too? Totally my dream guy.
Yes, but I still have a lot to learn. Smart and high-earning. Guess you're not short on cash, Stella. Share some with me, will you? What do you mean share? I found myself grateful for Madison's presence in my life, the only one with whom I could exchange such jokes. A month had passed by. Late at night, I got a call from Madison. Sorry, Stella.
For what?
Madison chuckled as if she was holding back a big secret. I only meant to take a little bit from you.
But he was surprisingly easy to win over.
So, I ended up taking everything, not just a little. It seems that during our meeting, Madison had secretly exchanged contact details with Brian. They met behind my back several times and eventually became romantically involved. Why? Why would you do that? We were. It's all a lie, obviously.
What?
You know, it was all calculated.
I joined the volunteer club because I thought it would be full of nice, naive people, and yes, I hit the jackpot. There were so many people I could use. People who are too kind, can't judge others well, and share everything once they trust someone.
Like you, Stella.
Thanks to that, I knew everything about Brian, his likes, dislikes, personality, and even his taste in women. From there, it was an easy win for me.
I'm way cuter than you, after all. You're lying, right? Madison?
I never expected you to bring along such an impressive guy.
Thanks, Stella. The call ended. Later, Brian officially called off our engagement, and the next year, he married Madison. Madison had a baby. That much was detailed in a letter she sent, making sure I knew. I moved far away, rented a house, and changed jobs to avoid any interaction with them. I hadn't met either of them since then.
Brian's made quite the name for himself.
He's working at a big hospital now, and we've moved.
All thanks to you, Stella.
Realizing that was her way of saying thanks for giving me Brian, I bit my lip.
I don't dwell on the past.
I put the clothes back and left the store. After returning home, I acted as if nothing had happened in front of my family and went to my bedroom, claiming I was tired. I never thought I'd run into Madison again. I was considering taking a nap until dinner to forget everything when my phone's notification sound went off.
A friend request?
It was from a social media account I had registered long ago and hadn't been using. Opening the app, I was surprised.
A friend request from Madison. Why?
Feeling there must be some intention behind it, I checked her profile and found a post from 10 minutes ago.
Met Stella today. Really nostalgic. She's as plain as ever. But still my dear friend. Here's a photo of Stella picking out clothes.
The photo showed me choosing clothes alone. She must have taken it before approaching me. The post had many comments.
Wow, Stella really has no taste.
Hasn't changed a bit since high school. So funny.
Madison's so kind to help her choose.
Unable to bear it any longer, I closed my phone. She must have sent the friend request just to show me this. Mocking me, exposing me in a public space. This was too cruel. How much more did she need to belittle me to be satisfied? A firm resolve for revenge began to stir within me. Today, I found myself back in Chinatown. A famous large department store had apparently opened nearby, and today, there was an opening sale with a 10% discount at all stores. Thanks to the sale, the department store was bustling with activity. After finishing my shopping, I was waiting on a bench in the plaza. That's when I heard a familiar voice.
Hey, is that you, Stella? What's this? Did the poor thing get lured in by the sale? Madison!
It was the opening day of the famous large department store. I had been wary, hoping not to run into Madison, yet here she was.
I was just here waiting for my family.
Never thought I'd run into you, Stella. That's right. I'm waiting for someone too.
Oh, your family?
But you're single, aren't you?
Got dumped by someone, right?
Hey, Brian. Brian was next to Madison, turning his face away from me, looking uncomfortable.
Mom, is this the lady Dad dumped?
She looks so plain and uncool. A girl who looked like she was in middle school laughed at me. Madison put her hand on the girl's shoulder, beaming proudly.
This is Mia, my pride and joy. She's smart like Brian and goes to a prestigious middle school. She's super cute, right? She's an influencer with 10,000 followers on social media. We're like the successful mother-daughter duo.
They both let out a vulgar laugh just as my son approached.
Mom?
Mark runs over to me. Seeing Madison's puzzled look, I said to her, "Let me introduce you. This is my son, Mark." Madison was taken aback.
Huh? You have a kid? Well, he's got a plain face just like you.
Then Nia tugged at Madison's arm.
Wait, Mom, this is Mark. The super popular YouTuber with 500K subscribers. He's really smart and makes puzzle and quiz videos with his friends. And he's the current heartthrob. He looks even more handsome in person. Wait, what? I'm Mia, an influencer. You know me, right? Can we exchange contacts?
Mia's eyes glistened as she gazed up at Mark, staring intently. Just like Madison used to.
Mia?
Never heard of you.
Plus, I heard from a distance how you were mocking my mom. I don't like people who insult others' families. But, hey, why didn't you tell me, Mom? You got me dumped. It's your fault.
Mia,
I'm a big fan of his. I looked forward to his videos every day, solved puzzles, and always sent comments, hoping to meet him someday. Why is this happening to me? I hate you, Mom.
Mia, wait.
Don't touch me.
Mia shook off Madison's hand and ran away crying. Madison, visibly shaken, turned to me with a furious look.
So what if your son is whatever he says he is? Brian works at the top university hospital in this area. I taught him everything so he could advance his career. Even how to cover up little medical errors. I mean mistakes, you know. Hey, Madison, don't talk about that. You must be some miserable single mother, right? Not wearing a ring. Being single at 36, what a late bloomer. My husband is handsome and a genius,
Madison said with a sarcastic smile. Then Mark exclaimed,
"Oh, Dad."
"Hey, Mark." Stella. Stephen, having finished shopping, approached us. I smiled sweetly at Madison.
Let me introduce my husband as well. This is Stephen, a doctor at a nearby hospital. You know him, don't you, Madison?
Seeing Stephen, Madison looked like she was about to lose her mind.
Stephen? The genius doctor who became the deputy director of the university hospital at 38?
I nodded in response. Stephen and I met 13 years ago. After Madison stole Brian from me, I moved away to avoid them and started a new job at a different hospital. That's where I met Stephen. Back then, Stephen was a rookie doctor. He appreciated my diligent work ethic and the way I interacted with patients, deeply empathizing with my desire to help others, a sentiment I've held since my time in the volunteer club. We were naturally drawn to each other and eventually got married. And that's how Mark came into our lives.
Just how did you manage to marry someone so impressive, Stella? Did you use some dirty trick? Stop it, Madison.
What's it with you, Brian? Don't interfere.
I said stop it.
Brian slapped Madison with great force. She fell, holding her reddened cheek, trembling.
What is wrong with you?
Brian glared at Madison.
This man is my boss. Haven't I told you before? I work at the same university hospital as Dr. Steven. You weren't listening because you were too obsessed with social media.
Brian deeply apologized to Stephen and me. I'm terribly sorry for my wife's insult. Madison, I'm truly sorry. Stephen looked down at Brian and growled.
You were talking about medical errors earlier, weren't you? That was just my wife's nonsense. I recall there was a medical error at the hospital you used to work at. A nurse was accused, and she has always claimed her innocence.
Yes, I think I'll have the hospital look into it again. My husband and my son both have good ears. I chuckled behind Stephen.
But
Brian collapsed, as if his soul had been drained. Madison was frozen, her eyes wide. I slowly began to speak.
Madison, you thought I was single because I wasn't wearing a ring, but actually, it's currently being serviced. I should have told you.
I'm sorry.
Stella, you.
Madison was shaking, her face flushed with anger. Then Stephen tapped my shoulder. Let's go home, Stella. We finished shopping, and besides, today is our anniversary.
That's right. Didn't you book a restaurant? I'm starving, let's hurry. Yes, let's.
We left the plaza together, leaving Madison behind. Her voice of frustration echoed behind us.
What the? No. I won't accept this.
I left the department store elegantly, hand in hand with my husband and son, with her voice as our background music. The dinner at the restaurant was wonderful. Celebrating our anniversary with my family, I couldn't help but feel incredibly fortunate. Yet, a bit of unease lingered. I checked my social media. Yes, it's about Madison. She might well concoct a story from today's events to mock me. I checked Madison's page.
Today was the best day. Was shopping at the department store and met that genius middle schooler, Mark. My daughter even got his autograph. I'm so lucky. Snapped a photo of Mark.
There was a photo of Mark from behind. Likely, she took it as we were leaving the department store. I was dumbfounded by Madison's persistence to use whatever she could. I commented on Madison's post.
Delete that photo right now. And stop lying about getting an autograph.
Then, a new post appeared.
Some people are getting jealous. It's terrible to accuse me of lying when I'm not.
The comments were filled with support for Madison. It was the usual scenario. There was no other choice. I decided to take a final measure. Later, I received a notification on social media. It was a friend request notification. The name was Madison too. An apology, perhaps? Though I had no expectations, I accepted Madison's friend request. Immediately, a message arrived.
Stella, what have you done? My account got deleted because of you. What are you going to do about it?
What am I going to do? I've told you repeatedly to delete it, and you wouldn't listen. I simply told Mark the truth. I informed Mark about Madison's post. We couldn't let the unauthorized photo and lies go unchecked, especially since it was harmful to Mark. Mark took it seriously and posted a video warning. Somebody's been posting my photos on social media, which were taken without permission. I didn't sign anything. Despite requests from me and through my parents for deletion, all were ignored. Taking photos without consent is a crime. Please stop doing this. Mark's fans quickly identified Madison's post, and after many reported it, her account was suspended. The friend request now was from Madison's new account. The 2 in the name likely meant it was her second account. She must have registered again with a new email, but her fixation towards social media was astonishing.
How much effort do you think I've put into my posts? Thinking of the text, selecting the photos. Then why not put that effort into your new account? Post the truth and use proper photos, and you won't have your account suspended again. Shut up. Don't tell me what to do. And don't message me again.
She was the one who reached out to me in the first place. I sighed and put down my phone. Later on, Madison began posting on her new account. Madison posted about her glowing daily life, fun girls' nights out, and parties. The friends appearing in photos with Madison were always the same group, including some from the volunteer club. Then, I received another friend request. I was curious but recognized the name upon seeing it. It was Olivia from the volunteer club, a frequent presence in Madison's posts. I hadn't talked to her much, but I remembered her face and name. Long time no see, Stella. It's been a while. How have you been?
Yes, well, actually, I wanted to talk to you about something concerning Madison. Do you have the time? Of course. What's up?
Madison always posts these flashy pictures on social media, surrounded by lots of friends. But it's all a lie. Everyone's being blackmailed into participating. Madison would dine out, claiming she's introducing them to good places, and then make everyone pay for her share. I was speechless. Finally, understanding the reason why members of the volunteer club appeared in Madison's photos.
Is that true?
Yes. Remember when Madison was criticized for taking unauthorized photos? Right after that, she contacted me. I've been complying, but I'm lost about what to do next. That's why I reached out to you, Stella. I saw you commented on that controversial post, so I thought you might support me. I thought for a moment.
You mentioned being blackmailed. What kind of leverage does she have?
She claimed to have seen me verbally abusing other members back when we were in the volunteer club, even threatening to expose this to my family. But I have no recollection of such actions. She insists she has evidence, and it seems others are in a similar situation. I felt something was off about Madison's claims. I suggested to Olivia.
Sounds like Madison's lying, as usual. She targets kind or vulnerable people. Why not subtly ask around?
A week later, one by one, the friends started disappearing from Madison's posts. According to Olivia, when asked for details or to show proof regarding everyone's weaknesses, Madison couldn't provide any and brushed off the request. Seeing her reaction, friends, or rather, those who had been threatened by Madison, became convinced that the so-called weaknesses Madison mentioned didn't exist. The glamorous daily life previously depicted in Madison's posts disappeared, replaced by solitary visits to cafes and boasts about her latest brand purchases. The likes and comments on her posts dramatically decreased. It was likely all a setup from the start. While checking my phone after work, I received a message.
I'll never forgive you.
I wondered if Madison found out I had given advice. Or was it just her assumption? Either way, I didn't want to be involved anymore, so I didn't reply. A few days later, as I was unlocking my door after returning from work, someone grabbed my shoulder from behind. Turning around, I saw it was Madison.
Madison? Why are you here?
I hired a detective.
I know your husband is off today and has been out with your son since this morning.
Madison pushed her way into my house and began to yell as she entered.
Brian is being interrogated by the police. And because of Mark's photo, even Mia has been avoiding me, and all my friends are gone. I'll end up all alone. You have to take responsibility.
Responsibility? This is all your fault, isn't it? Brian going to the police is because you instructed him to cover up his mistakes, right? And Mia avoiding you is because of the wrong you did. The same with social media. Threatening people to pretend to be your friends. You're the cause of all this. I responded calmly. Perhaps the incident at the department store had cleared my heart, healing past wounds. I won't run away. I won't lose anymore. Wait a minute. When you got a boyfriend in high school, it was all thanks to me. Without my advice, you would have been ignored for life. Now, return the favor. Give back everything you took from me.
You're the one who took everything, Madison. You betrayed me. There's no favor to return. If there's any grudge, it's already been paid back. You should experience the hell I was pushed into.
As I refused, Madison began to cry, crouching down. You're so cruel. Please, we're best friends, right? Tell your husband that Brian is innocent. Make Mark tell Mia he doesn't hate him. Please, I beg you. Black tears streamed down Madison's cheeks, likely the result of her heavy eyeshadow and mascara dissolving in her tears. Madison's face was a mess. She continued to cry, covering her face with her hands as if she were playing the victim. During this, I quietly went to the bathroom and made a phone call to a certain place. After a while, the doorbell rang, and the door was opened from the outside.
What? What's this?
Madison shivered. We received a report about this house. Yes, she forced her way in here. It was the police officer I had called. The officer knelt down to Madison's level.
You're suspected of trespassing. We've also received several complaints about noise from the neighbors, so you'll need to come with us to the station.
The officers handcuffed Madison and led her to the police car. Of course, she resisted.
No, I'm innocent. Somebody, anybody.
Madison was pushed into the police car and taken to the station. Stephen and Mark were surprised by the event, but were more amazed that I had handled Madison calmly. They were relieved I was safe and hugged me, saying, "We're so glad." That night, Stephen and I were in the bedroom.
Stella, I have some good news.
Good news?
Madison's husband, well, my subordinate, seems to be under investigation for medical malpractice. Rumor has it he's almost certainly guilty.
Is that so? Madison had been malicious since high school, probably desperate to elevate Brian for her own gain and status. Eventually, Brian was arrested by the police. The scandal of a doctor blaming a nurse for his mistake was sensationalized in the media, exposing their wrongdoing. Madison was also arrested for instructing Brian to cover up the mistake. Both ended up in prison, together. The victim of the medical malpractice is preparing to sue, and it seems both Brian and Madison's lives are effectively over. That goes the same for their daughter Mia.
Stella, isn't this dress nice?
I like it. It looks like it would suit Mom.
Really? Let me see.
We were at an apparel shop, the three of us. The last time I came here alone, Madison interrupted me, and I ended up going home without buying anything. So, we decided to come back together. I tried on the dress that Stephen and Mark recommended.
Isn't it a bit plain? Not at all. It suits you. Exactly, being plain doesn't mean it's bad. If it suits you, then it's all good.
I was happy to hear their words.
Yes, you both are right.
I want to continue spending peaceful days with my family of 3.